I've been made. He knows that I've touched him. And then she looks up into his eyes, and he's looking right down at her. And she knows. And she says, "What do I run?" And then tears begin to fill her eyes. And she says, "Jesus, it was me. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Master. I'm sorry. But for 12 years, I've been sick. For 12 years, I haven't been able to be a mother. For 12 years, I couldn't be. For 12 years, I couldn't go. I've been there. No one could help. And then I heard about you. And I know I'm no way. But I knew if I could just touch the hem of your garment, I could make whole. I'm sorry. And Jesus looks at her. And I believe Jesus reached down, took her hand and picked her up, and says, "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go. You are free." And then, in this time that it took Jesus to have the discourse with this lady, Jairus' friend come up to Jairus, and I honestly believe quite sarcastically, they look at Jairus and they say, "Why bother the teacher anymore? Your daughter is dead." Jesus looks at Jairus and says, "Don't worry. The child is not dead. She's asleep." And Jesus goes home with Jairus, tells everybody to get out of the room, and he raises Jairus' daughter up, and he gives her life. Amazing story. Two amazing miracles. And I believe they're combined here for one reason, because I believe God wants to tell us something here in these two stories that are very important to all of us in our lives. And I think what God wants to tell us is this. First of all, that everyone is important to Jesus. Everyone is important to Jesus. You see, we're not even given her name. And I believe that we're not given her name for a reason, because I believe that God wants to see in the big scheme of things, in her culture, in her society, in her world, that everyone looked at her and she was insignificant. She didn't matter. She didn't mean anything. Jairus, we're given his name, and we're told that he is the ruler of the synagogue. Jairus was powerful. He was wealthy. He was influential. Well, the world would look at Jairus and say, "Man, he's the man. He's got everything going for him." He would look at this woman and say, "She doesn't matter. She doesn't count. She's nothing." But you see, everyone's important to Jesus. The Bible said that Jesus and that God is no respecter of persons. Jairus, in all of his wealth, and all of his power, and all of his influence, this story tells me this one thing, that in that God wants you to take from this miracle today is simply this: that no matter who you are, no matter where you're at in life, no matter what anyone else might think of you, you are important to Jesus. You count. You matter. Doesn't matter what the world thinks. Doesn't matter what your neighbors think. Doesn't matter what your family thinks. You are important to Jesus. You're just as important to Jesus as the President of the United States. You're just as important to Jesus as Bill Gates, as Rockefeller. You're just as important to Jesus as famous athletes. You matter to God. And the second thing that I see in this story, and I think the reason that they're combined, is this: not only is everyone important to Jesus, but the second thing is that Jesus has time for your problem. You realize that? I don't know what you're going through this morning, but probably you're going through something. Most of us are constantly in our lives. We're going through something. You know, if you're like me, your life is just, you're kind of like that hamster. I love the hamsters in the cage because they remind me so much of me. They're in that cage, they got that wheel, and they're running around on that wheel. They're running. They're going nowhere. The only time they go anywhere is when they stop and they're slung off. See, that's where I come into my life. I'm like that hamster on that wheel. I'm running, never get anywhere. The only way I get anywhere is when I stop and it just swings me out of this cage. But Jesus has time for your problem. You're important to God. And no matter what it is that you're going through, I hope that's not the case, but sometimes it could be. Your pastor doesn't have time. Your husband, your wife, your mom, your dad don't have time. I want to tell you, Jesus has time for your problem. The Bible said, Jesus says, "Women, you're all you that labor and heavy laden, and I'll give you rest." The Bible says in the book of Proverbs that God doesn't sleep, or in the book of Psalms that God doesn't sleep, and God doesn't slumber. That God always has time for you and your problem. So, from this miracle this morning, first thing, God wants you to know that you're important. You're important to Him. And don't think for one minute that somebody else is more important than you are, because that's not the case. That's not the case. You're just as important to God as anybody else is. And second thing is that Jesus has time for you, and He has time for your problem. That's what this story tells us. That regardless of who you are, Jesus has time. And Jesus will take the time to touch you and to meet your needs. And the third thing is this: Jesus has what you need the most. Jesus has what you need. Her husband didn't have what she needed. Wasn't that he was a bad fellow? Wasn't that he didn't love her? Wasn't that he didn't care? He just didn't have what she needed. The doctors, not that they weren't skilled, not that they weren't the best there were, but they just didn't have what she needed. Jesus had what she needed. And what I want you to see is, I don't care what it is in your life this morning, Jesus has what you need. You say, "Preacher, you don't know where." It doesn't matter. Jesus has what you need in your life. I don't care this and this. And then I think I'm going to have something, so we're getting ready to close. Won't you come on around? You know, you look at this lady, and you know, Jesus has what you need most. You know, you look at this lady and says the biggest need she had in her life was that she'd be healed, and you're probably right. That was probably the biggest need that she had in her life. But, you know, I look at this story, and it kind of struck me as odd that Jesus, he went out of his way to point this woman out. You know what I'm saying? She was healed. When she touched the hem of his garment, her faith is healed, had healed her. Jesus said that. Her faith had healed her. When she touched the hem of that garment. What his garment, it was her faith that healed her. But Jesus stopped and Jesus pointed her out because you see, Jesus knew that there was an issue here that was probably just as big as the issue of blood. And that's the loneliness, the isolation, the separation that she'd been going through for 12 years. And so Jesus pointed her out because he wanted to make everyone know, he wanted to make sure everyone knew that she was healed. He wanted everyone to know that you didn't have to shun her anymore. You didn't have to worry about her anymore. She was healed. He saw not only the sickness, but he saw, I think, the emotional scars that this sickness had brought on for 12 years. And as he looked at her, and as he pointed her out, he made sure everybody knows, Jesus didn't just heal the issue of blood. Randy, I believe when Jesus said, you have been set free. He set her free from all those emotional scars that had been built up for 12 years. And when she walked away that day, she walked away home. She walked away home. Now, God believe that there's maybe some of you here this morning that you're going through some struggles. You're going through some things in your life that maybe your mom, your dad, your husband, your wife, your preacher, your doctor, your psychiatrist can't help you. There's something there that they just can't help you. But I believe that Jesus has got you here this morning for one reason, and that's this. Because he wants you to know, I got what you need. I can help you where you need help the most. And it doesn't matter what anybody else says, what anybody else can do. Jesus says, I'm here now. And if you will just come down and just by faith, as this lady did, just touch the hem on her, I can set you free. There's some of you this morning that you're carrying scars. You're carrying around things that maybe you've been carrying around for 12 years, maybe 20 years, maybe 30